requires bravery and action, honesty, and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate you, and encourage you to make things that you love. We believe in the power of community. Shit, we believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from others in hugs and high fives. When we put together who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world, and everyone is welcome. The show ain't free.
They asked me if I wanted to have a song. That was the song. Start. This work? Yes, great. Start the timer. Thank you guys for being here, loving the packed house. Excited to share about my view of the global theme vision. Specifically, I want to share about how my view about having a vision in one's life has changed over the years. But first, a little shout out to, for those of you who don't know, Creative Mornings was started by a designer named Tina Roth Eisenberg. She has a really great blog called Swiss Miss, and I have been a big fan of Tina for many years. Hopefully you can tell this is a younger me. I was in Dumbo, where Tina has her offices, 12 years ago. This is 2012, and me and a friend of mine were like, we should go see if we can meet her. And so we basically crashed her office. She was very, very generous, let us like hang out and take pictures and so on. So it means a lot to be on a Creative Mornings sort of stage, if you will. So it's been a long time coming. I want to talk about vision, but I want to start at the beginning. So baby pictures. So that's me in the front there. It's my dad on the left, my mom in the red sweater showing me doing something. I'm sure I'm trying to mess something up. I grew up in Maryland for the first 5 years of my life. And it was a fun childhood. I don't look like I'm having fun, but I am. I really loved animals. I love the outdoors, and I'm so glad that my parents exposed me to those things. Had a lot of good friends. These are my two best friends when I was that age. They were twins. They may still be twins. I don't know where they are now. Hopefully they're both still with us. You know, I think my childhood, as I look back on it, was a mix of moments of being outside and being involved and explorative. I remember just wanting to know about everything and wanting to get under everything. Picking up horseshoe crabs, you know, whatever it was, I was interested. I was never scared of the outdoors. I loved the beach. I loved getting out there. But when I was 5, my mom moved us to a town called Reston, Virginia. Relationship with my dad wasn't working out, and so she picked me and my sister up and moved us down to Reston. Reston now is known for, you know, big money. I think Google has an office there, lots of corporate centers. But in the 80s, it was not as built up, and there were about 4 or 5 Section 8 housing projects, and that's where we moved. And the 80s has been obviously known for the crack cocaine epidemic, and the neighborhood I lived in, Stonegate, was at the center for it. So this is a Washington Post article about the neighborhood I lived in, about an underground investigation that found a crack ring in my neighborhood. So you can see the date, 1988. That's the year I moved to Stonegate, and I lived there from 5 until I was 19. So I grew up in this neighborhood that, I'm a sensitive, I don't know if you can tell. I'm a sensitive guy, and growing up in a very dangerous, very unpredictable neighborhood was really scary. And so, unfortunately, also my parents had substance abuse issues, and so childhood was both sort of an explorative time, but also a very scary one. And in that environment, you can really easily be convinced of lack, of the idea of can't. That you can't. I mean, it's in the middle of the suburbs, this housing project, and so I would look around and I'd see these cars that I can't access. I see people going on vacations that I can't do. I see people wearing clothes I couldn't afford, and so I really had convinced myself of this can't mentality in my youth. But we got through it day by day. I did have a lot of good friends who also liked to explore. We explored the outdoors. We went to music festivals and camped out. We explored a lot of substances. And, I moved through it. And I think it was my friends that really enabled me to move through that time in my life. But that can't narrative really kind of lived in the back of my mind. Came to Richmond for college. This is a very college-y party picture. Is that the old Baja Bean, if anyone's lived in Richmond long enough for that one? We used to get into it. And I think it was my friends who really kind of held me down, but I saw them, and a lot of my friends had access to things I did not as well. And so I saw them traveling the world, and again, I felt like I couldn't. And it was an explorative time for me, and I went to college. I got a psychology degree. I hated psychology when I got out of college. And so I just had, some sort of low-paying jobs for years. But I did work for United Airlines, and so I got some cheap travel. I didn't have any money when I was traveling, but at least I got places. And so this is a picture of me around that time in Barcelona. And this picture kind of represents kind of that period for me. It was really reflective, and I was beginning to question or really be frustrated with this can't mentality, and I really wanted to open up my life much more. Really, kind of a sick and tired sort of feeling of living the way I was. I felt like life wasn't as big and meaningful as it could be, and so this is when I started to lean into Vision 1.0, my first sort of imagining of what it is to have a vision for one's life. And it was vision as a horizon. I basically thought in the future, down the road, on the horizon, maybe there could be something better. It wasn't articulated in great detail, but it was a general sense of better, different, change. And that approach to having a vision in my life started to help me. I started to imagine more things. I started to experiment with different things I could do. And so one of those experiments was a nonprofit that I wound up running for 9 years, which was called Feast RVA. Yeah? You have some attendees who maybe have been to a feast or two. So started Feast in 2012. And it was inspired by something I saw when I was on a trip in New York. And basically what it was, just to give you an idea, so one, it started as just a project. I wanted to try something with my buddy Johnny. And basically what we did is we had some social stuff, a website. We asked people to send us ideas for community projects that they wanted funding for. Small funding, but funding nonetheless. And then we would host a dinner at an art gallery. And we'd sell tickets to that dinner, 50 tickets, and then folks would come, they'd give us their ticket, and we'd give them a ballot with 3 of the community ideas on it. We'd have short presentations by the people on that ballot, then we'd have a nice buffet dinner, live music, booze, and then people would vote on which idea they thought was the best. And whoever won would get a grant from the proceeds of the ticket sales to go do their idea. So the money came in, it went out. It was a party sort of energy, so I loved it. And that project, just a once-off thing, turned into something. Richmond really responded to it, and we wound up doing it for 9 years, selling out every event 4 times a year. And that really began to convince me of a can narrative, that I really could do things. And I didn't need a degree to tell me I could be creative, I could just do. And it was the beginning of a lot of steps in that direction. Another big step was me getting a big boy job. I was also experimenting with writing at the time and making sure that I was trying to get some of my writing out there, and so I got away with that. I pitched a few articles to local magazines and that sort of thing, so I parlayed my feast and these things I could point to on the internet that I wrote to get a branding job with an international branding firm called Profit. So this is the acceptance letter. And that really kicked off a whole new part of my life. And I was still seeing this vision of something better. Again, not really articulated this horizon in the distance, but I was running to it now. And I got involved in the community in a variety of ways. This is a picture from the first TEDx RVA, something we used to do here. Recognize some faces. And continued to do Feast. It got bigger. Our marketing got a little bit better, our design got a little bit better, and I hosted these for, like I said, 9 years, and people really responded to it, and which we were so pleased to, including getting the Style Weekly 40 Under 40 with a 40, and I was really coming into this can thing. I was like, okay, we are off and going. Like this is amazing. And we did a lot of really great work at Profit as well. So Profit is this international branding firm. I was there as a writer, I think I mentioned. And I would come up with communication strategies. I'd write the mission, vision, and values for a lot of organizations. And it reinforced this idea of vision to me, because we would think about a vision as a horizon for a brand that they could pursue. But we also did stuff for the community. Hopefully you recognize this woman here, Angela Patton, leader of Girls for a Change. We developed a brand strategy for her. And hopefully you've also checked out the new film that Angela co-directed called Daughters. There was a screening last night. I'm still getting the tears out of my clothes. But it's also on Netflix, so please check out Daughters. But it was a really bright time, and so from about 2012 to 2019, I was moving, and I was also feeling myself. And the kid who grew up in Stonegate with no money was like, I need a Land Rover, and I was putting the good money that I was making to use, and I again was just running, and it was going well, and I had every intention to keep making it happen. But then, one of the achievements that I wanted, which was a new promotion to a creative director, which I thought was in the bag, I didn't get. And I felt undervalued in my community. I was sort of seen as a leader of running this organization, being on boards and so on. And at my job, they were like, "You're not ready to be a leader." So I said, "All right, well, I'm out." And at first I thought, I'll just go get another job at another firm and be a creative director there, buy an even better car. And a few friends convinced me actually to try working for myself. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. If it goes terribly, I can just go get a job and forget about it. So that's what I did. And at the beginning of that, I was thinking, oh, I'll just jump right into work. But then I thought, man, I've been working since I was 15. Once again, no money in the family, and so I was like, maybe I'll take some time off of work before I start working for myself. And so I took 3 months. I bought myself 3 months. And that time, not working, just being, thinking, imagining, that time changed my life. And it introduced me to what would then become a new way of imagining a vision for my life. And so, in preparation for this talk, I was like, how can I articulate what I was thinking at that time? So I started scrolling back in my notes app because I'm like heavy in there, like writing things to myself. And so I want to show you a little bit of what the thinking was. And at this time, I was really willing to question a lot, really willing to open and just imagine my life in a different way. And so couple of entries. So it was May 2019 when I started working for myself. So this is like a month afterwards. So as I enter a week that will begin my new era of work, I'm motivated to take an open approach. Open to learning what I like about this style of working, open to being different than expected, open to exploring a version of this life I want to enjoy for the long term. This is my opportunity to figure out how I want to work. This is my opportunity to explore all my next chapter may have in store. Work hard, stay open. I'm like telling myself, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to approach this. And I got a little bit more into it. This is a month later. As I am no longer an employee, I have I have come into a greater awareness that I am the architect of my life. I have the capacity to shape a story down to great detail and how I construct my time on the planet. So you can see me talking to myself about what I'm going to do. And, in that time, I realized that I had been pursuing this pursuit of material goods. I mean, you saw the Land Rover. And I was just trying to be more and more comfortable. And of course, I came from a place where there was no comfort, or there was very little comfort. But it wasn't fulfilling. Every new accomplishment I had, every new thing I bought, yeah, it was nice in the moment. I looked good in the car, but it wasn't a depth of feeling and fulfillment that I was seeking. And I realized, it was the times when I was out in the outdoors, at the river, feeling wonder, feeling awe, feeling adventure. That's what I really wanted to live around. And I was like, well, how can I do this? How can I figure out a life where that's the thing? I couldn't live on my savings for very much longer. And here's another one that you can kind of see me thinking about this, because I was like, maybe if I just act like there's a path, one will appear. And so I took this idea of, awe, wonder, and adventure, and it felt like a return. It felt like a return to a spirit of youth, a spirit of exploration. And so that brought me to a new vision of vision, which is Vision 2.0, which is a vision as a tool. I could imagine down to great detail, take this architect of my life idea and imagine what I wanted to experience every day, and then just stack up choices to make that happen. And so that's what I began to do. And I told myself at the beginning of that time, in August of 2019, I told myself I'd give it 5 years. 5 years, and I'm going to pursue this awe, wonder, adventure thing and try to work as well. And last August, it was 5 years. And it's been a good 5 years. I've got outside a ton. I got back to the beach, holding fewer horseshoe crabs, but still enjoying it, learning how to surf now, the hardest thing I've done in my adult life. I got to the river a lot. If anyone follows me on Instagram, you're probably sick of my river photos, but it was a place of awe and wonder for me. And I've also had the opportunity to do some amazing work. As Benita mentioned, I write exhibitions in museums. This is a museum in Queens, in New York, for the house of a inventor from the 1800s, a man named Lewis Latimer. And I've been able to do something else, which is invest in my relationships. So I was able to help my dad get into a really nice assisted living space. And I was also able to deepen my relationship with my girlfriend. Really, it's who's sitting here, front row. I realize in this time, because I expanded the time in my life and refocused what I was spending my time doing, I had the opportunity to really deeply invest in where I am, who I am emotionally, and then share that. And, make dinner while she's late at work, spend the time to really connect and keep that connection alive and keep that communication alive. And so, I've learned a few things over these 5 years that I want to share. They asked me to give like a call to action sort of thing. So, lessons it is. And so, first of all, this vision that I had, this vision of imagining a life that preferences awe, that preferences wonder, that preferences adventure, I had to commit to it because the last 5 years has not been like a seamless journey. I was broke more often than I wanted to be. And, working for yourself, the projects don't always connect exactly how you want them to. And so just like I'm learning in surfing, I have to commit. Even if I get my ass kicked in the water, I still have to paddle back out and try again. And so committing to the vision was essential. But also, I had to be specific. I didn't want to just see vision as a horizon again. I wanted to see it as a tool. So I needed to get down to the details. So I wanted to say, I'm only interested in doing work that I find meaningful. I want to work half as much I was working before. And I want to earn some money, less money than I was making in the corporate space, but enough maybe to have some comfort. And I also found the more I shared my story, the more the story resonated back to me and the more I was encouraged. So I was lucky enough to be featured in a new book called The Good Enough Job, published by Penguin Random House. Chapter 6 is my chapter. That chapter got parlayed into a article in the Atlantic magazine. And then I also wrote a book, which is in the back, about the philosophy of how I took my choices and stacked them up to create the vision for my life that I wanted. Venmo and Cash App. So thank you for allowing me to share this story of how my vision for a life has evolved. And only 2 minutes over. I think we can do a question answer thing, yeah?
I feel like you can just ask and we can facilitate some Q&A.
Great. And questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah, sure.
What were some of the biggest things that kept you going? I can imagine it was probably pretty challenging. What were some of those things you held on to when you were in the toughest moments?
Yeah, honestly, it sounds like a little bit maybe odd, but like, whose life am I living, right? Oh, I have a little bit of less money. It's not going exactly how I want. What am I retreating to? Where would I go if I'm living my life? This is the one chance I have to do it big, to do it well. So, yeah, a little being broke sometimes. Is that the end of the world? Or can you buck up and get to it and actually make my life what I want my life to be? And I owed it to that little kid to make it happen. I also think that I say this thing a lot, but we have to choose our hard in the world, right? Working in a corporate job is a certain kind of hard, right? I had money, I had, all these promotions until I didn't, but these accomplishments, and we chase that stuff. And then we complain about how burnout we are and so on and so forth, right? That's a certain type of hard. Living as an entrepreneur is also hard, but it's a different kind of hard, and I'd much rather choose that hard than the other. It's all going to be hard. There's no getting through this thing the easy way. that's even hard. Trying to do it the easy way is hard. And so I just committed. I said, this is the thing I chose. Let's stick it out. And I call it my experiment because, in a lab, scientists, when they get back maybe data that doesn't, confirm their hypothesis, do they leave the lab? Do they just say, oh, never mind? No, they keep going. They keep experimenting. So I committed to that, and that's what I plan to do. Hello, this is fun. Here, second row.
Hi, how do you when you have other people dependent on you? Partners, parents, children,
Sure.
just people who need you. How do you just step away for 3 months and say, see you on the other side?
Well, I stayed in Richmond, so I was around. But I'm reminded of a Howard Thurman quote. And we know Howard Thurman. Oh my God, you all have someone to Google as soon as you leave this place. Hopefully you guys are familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King. Howard Thurman was Dr. Martin Luther King's mentor. He was an incredible man. He has this quote where he says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. And so I saw it, I took that seriously. I saw me investing in my time. There's no way, if I had a corporate job, that I could have showed up for my dad and gotten him out of the sticky situation he was in and helped him get into this assisted living thing. There's no money in my family. So this is all through the government, the paperwork, all of that. If I had a 60-hour-a-week job, there's no way I would have been able to do that. The expansion of my life actually gave me more ability to show up for people. It has given me, hopefully Siobhan can confirm, it's given me more opportunity to show up for my girlfriend and show up for the people in my life. It is actually counterintuitive, but it's the opposite. It doesn't just doing me as a person who wants to have connection, me as a person who wants to have relationships. So that became actually a center point, not something to the side. I'm not only just surfing, I'm also, I'm not strong enough to only be surfing yet. But I want those relationships. So I put those at the center of my life, and I put work, not as the center. So yeah, does that answer your question? Yes, cool. All the way in the back.
Can you give a teaser for chapter 6?
Oh man, I wish I had. It's a great intro chapter. It's like, Josh is sitting on a rock smoking a joint. Like it's very like, he really makes it. I'm like, I'm pretty into it. Yeah, I mean, it basically walks you through how I started in this corporate space, and then evolved that through some really clear parameters. I'm very interested, I say, I wanted to work half as much. It sounds nice, but it gets down to little choices that you make. So I traded in the Land Rover for a Honda CR-V. I moved from a house in the Fan to an artist collective on the South Side. So I made serious choices about the shape and look of my life and how much my life costs. So to actually make this life work. Because there are trade-offs. Like I said, it's hard, right? Like I can't make $200K and not work at all unless I'm exploiting someone, And so I took I worked half as much, but I also took a hit to my cash half as much. But do I need so many things? Do I need every single comfort all the time? I remember that time period, and I would be offended if I got cold or a little too hot or a little too uncomfortable or if I was hungry at any moment, And it's like, what? What is that? This is a life to live. I'm not trying to hide from living, So I really break down exactly what I did throughout that chapter. And that whole book is great. That book is all about sort of work, decentralizing work from our lives. And I've had many people just pick up the book because they were interested and they're like, wait a minute, is this the Josh Epperson that I know from Richmond? So it's been really great to be a part of that. But I highly recommend The Good Enough Job.
Josh, before you ask the next question,
Sure.
we have some people in the back who want to know how much your book is, because I think you're ready to get cash out.
Oh,
So could you just let them know?
Let's do $15, a little discount for the day.
And feel free to continue.
Yeah.
Next question.
All the way back there.
So I'm 2 months into a similar journey
Cool. Congratulations.
No, clap now.
I want to be a musician. I am a musician, but I want to be a musician who actually makes some kind of money.
Fair.
And I think the biggest challenge I've had is, like, in working for yourself, there's a lot of time alone. There's a lot of feeling like you're the only one invested.
Word.
And that's hard, like, just being alone in that space. And advice for that.
Dude, you're doing it. I mean, talk to a dude. If you want to hire a musician, I got one for you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's about having community, but being alone, being lonely is the real enemy. Being alone is not a bad thing, I think a lot of us, because of these things, hunker down and are by ourselves just in this world. But you can be alone in a variety of different ways. You could be alone walking in the woods. You could be alone, surfing. You could be alone in a lot of other ways. So if you're alone, you don't have to be alone inside your house either, And so exposing yourself to the world continuously has been the thing that has really helped me deal with that. But I work for myself. I don't have a team or anything, so I'm writing exhibitions alone. But I am also involving my friends. One of the things that has really concerned me in the last handful of years is how men, as they get older, have fewer and fewer friends. And we've probably all heard of this concept of the deaths of despair, where because of loneliness, we retreat and we use drugs or we kill ourselves slowly. And I want to defend against that. I don't want to do that. So I make it an active point to reach out, especially to male friends of mine. I play pool almost monthly with a buddy of mine just to reconnect, And he does a lot of, academic work, and we chat about our lives, and it helps feel less alone. But you are in charge of your life. You have a cell phone, I imagine. You made it here today. You have every capability to bring more people into your life. So do it.
I have time for one more.
One more? Let's go to Ram.
So after you finish, I want to stand up and give you a stand ovation. And so my question is, when you talked about, or you were in those moments of really having a conversation with yourself about what you're gonna do,
Yeah.
having experience being in those situations myself, I would imagine that there are times when you realize that it was bigger than you, and you had to perhaps you had to tap into something greater than you. What's your vision of that force or that energy that's greater than you that you had to call on?
Yeah. I connect to that outside. The ocean is way bigger than me. I sit out on the river and I think about these ancient boulders that I'm sitting on, millions of years. A lot of those rock formations are millions of years old. This ancient river flowing. We did a land acknowledgement. Native people who have been here for thousands of years depend on that river. I'm sitting by the same waters. And they say you never step into the same river twice, but this space, it calls to that ancient thing. I think of the ancient time, long time, geological time as a greater force, because it has created all of the things around us. And I get to be here for some of that. And so whenever I was in one of these spaces where I don't have any money, and I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if this experiment is going to happen for me. I'd go on a walk. And I walk on the trails around the James River, and I would be, what I wanted to tap into is also, I don't necessarily have a deity that I call on, but I'm so open to the idea of serendipity. And so I would just go on a walk and just see what would happen. And almost inevitably, I would see someone on the trail who I, knew or would just meet. I would see some amazing, nature moment, like I was, on planet Earth or something, like if you go to the river at about this time of year, maybe like 7:30, 8 a.m., you can see the osprey hunting. And it is incredible to see all these birds just circling and then diving and circling and diving. That has been happening for millennia, and I get to witness it. And all I have to do is walk down to the river. It's free. It's amazing. And I started getting into packing up my backpack. I would take my French press and my little camp stove, and I would make coffee and watch the birds. Like it was a great way to start the day, and it diminished all my stresses. Because, what is anxiety? What is a paycheck to the trees? What is a paycheck to an osprey?
Yes.
And so I would tap into that. And that's what it was for me.
Josh,
I do.
thank you so very much.
Thank you.
It was an amazing talk.